Boom! Welcome to Tokyo Tonight. I am Hiko Simon, and good to see you all. It's been a good week. I hope that you're doing well. Nice to see we've got a few people there already in the chat. In fact, I wonder if this is actually full size. Seems to be. Let me just double check this. We can't change the size of that, so I guess it is. It's good to see you all. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to blow up the size of the screen that I'm watching. Hope that you're all well. Good to see Sergeant Bilko. Believe in yourself. Steve from Berkeley. And Mr. Cordy Chep. I'm glad that you made it. No World Cup clash indeed today. Although all non-European teams are out. That is correct. Bit of a surprise, I suppose. But yes, well done Europe. I guess it's become like the European Championships. I've been kind of enjoying. I mean, it's been very late in Japan to watch the World Cup, so generally I watch the first game, not the second game, but still. And yeah, very good to see you all. First thing is some big updates from MyChan TV. In fact, I'd quite like to show you if I can do this. In fact, I've got to do this the right way. We have made some really big changes to the site in some ways which I think are going to make it very well. I think we're basically going to be out of beta this week. We've only got like 2 more things that I want to fix. So I'd love to show you that. And again, encourage you all now. It's pretty much almost now like stable and ready. What I was originally aiming for with the site was to have the site all set and to have 2 types of settings. Like basically have like a paid version that I could try to get some subscriptions back and a free version for everybody. And then think about what to do later about an app and stuff like that. But all the feedback I got from everybody is, you know, rather than do the subscription-based side, you know, get an app. And the thing is that costs more money for more development, and it's already taken a long time and it's cost quite a lot. But there again, I do like the idea of doing a Kickstarter. You know, if people can see the working site with all the features there, and you know, if you guys are interested in supporting, you know, pushing towards getting like an Android app, an iOS app, maybe a Fire TV app. And getting all the features that instead of making them pro, make them free, but you know, get them all, basically get the development covered through a Kickstarter. I reckon that might be a really fun way to do it. So that's what I'm thinking about at the moment. So let me give you a quick show. I've actually just gone and uploaded a whole bunch of real simple how-to videos on the MyChan TV YouTube channel. It's super cool. Hey Kim, boom, good to have you back here indeed, and good to see you too, Chris. So let me show you the site and quickly how it works, just because it's really close now. A couple of big fixes got in this week. So let me do this. I believe that in order to do this, I need to move this over here, and I need to capture self 2. Let's do this. So this is a site. Let me just quickly show you how it works. Basically when you go in, it'll grab all of your YouTube subscriptions. It'll put it onto either a grid view or a single, if you prefer, a single list view, which will show the video information, the channel information associated with each channel. And as you can see, it's really cool. What you can do is you can turn lights on and lights off. You can also go and see you can also see all of the bundles on the side, left hand side. So I'm just thinking, those weren't passwords by the way, but those were, what do I do about that? Well, I can edit the video, so I guess I'm going to make this video offline afterwards. Hey Andrew, my boy. So yes, I'm going to have to cut that particular bit out, but that's okay. It just showed email addresses. I don't mind the email address associated with this. But in any case, these are bundles that you can create. But the way that it works is basically you can go and create, for example, you can do a filter or a search for all the channels, for example, that have a particular theme like news. You can just go add them all to a bundle for news. Boom. And once you've got that, you can actually go and play adding. They're added. You can go check. There they all are added to this bundle. You can go remove individual ones, you can go play, and when you go into the player, you can actually, for example, in addition to this will just autoplay like TV, so you can basically make it full screen and watch it like TV, where it will just automatically help you keep up with your subscriptions. It will show all the latest videos. These get refreshed in the background every 6 hours, but it'll basically help you keep up with all the latest videos. You can go forward or backwards, you can jump straight to videos in the playlist. You can thumbs up or thumbs down. You can jump to other bundles if you want to see, for example, humor, latest Google videos. This is just a single bundle made out of Google, for example. Lights on, lights off. You can actually go and organize your subscriptions by when they were most recently updated. So for example, I can see that there's a channel there that hasn't been updated for 3 years, so I might want to get rid of that. There again, if I see channels here that get updated every few hours, I know that these might be good ones to add to a bundle. So it's super cool. I'm making training videos of these, but I think you get the idea. Boom, let me go back to the regular view. So yeah. Please go have a look. It's just about done. If we get 2 final fixes, one for speeding up, adding new bundles, and another one just for the mobile view when you look at this on your mobile phone. If we can fix those 2 last things, which we're hoping to get done this week, I'm going to declare it stable and out of beta. Lots and lots of thanks to all of the beta testers, many of whom are here in the comments. Yeah, I very much appreciate that. And yes, look out for, instead of trying to do a subscription version of this, for now I'm going to focus on trying to set up a Kickstarter. So look out for more information about that, which will be oriented towards making mobile dedicated apps for this. So yeah. Oh well, Andrea, I know you've had a busy weekend and it's late for you, so glad that you can make it. And let's get into some subjects in that case. So, well, let's quickly see who's joined actually since we've done it. Mr. Cordychep, indeed. Mr. Japan almost made it, but you know, against Belgium, who were a very strong team. I mean, they took down Brazil, so you know, you can't blame them too much. Kim, Andrea Morware, Nippon Culture Quest, good to see you. I think Robert. Oh, is Robert in here as well? The J Vlog, good to see you. Salute there indeed. And yes, okay, so let's get into subjects. Quite a few this week actually. So first thing is, this is kind of funny. North Korea denounces gangster-like US demand to disarm. This has some depth, but first superficially, let's just enjoy the irony of a country that basically uses gangster tactics as its formal foreign policy. You know, calling America, you know, fairly or unfairly gangster-like in their tactics. Of course, America's being unilateral and saying, do it or we're going to bomb you and all that sort of stuff, and this is an offer you can't refuse and all that sort of stuff. True. Perhaps a little bit further down the list is the fact that, you know, apparently the agreement that Trump did with Kim Jong-un in Singapore was that there would be a number of steps, which would be an improvement in relations, a lasting peace treaty, denuclearization would follow those steps, and that eventually it would lead to the removal of US troops from the Korean Peninsula. And this is what they expect in these phases. So the idea that the Americans are flying over North Korea and immediately demanding that North Korea already start with denuclearization, you know, is a little bit off the script of what they were expecting. But there again, I don't really feel much sympathy, obviously, for their position. And again, given that they, you know, frequently shell South Korea and then allow family reunions the next week in order to avert, you know, they act crazy in order to basically get away with crazy stuff. So, I mean, they do, you know, gangster-like tactics as their foreign policy, but it is funny to see them using that terminology, which they did yesterday. MyChan TV, as I said, lots of cool updates, particularly the ones there which allow you to organize your subscriptions now according to how fresh the content on them is, which lets you unsubscribe and get rid of some of the dead channels and stuff like that. That's a really big improvement. Yeah, that's a nice change to the site, which you can just see. And again, if you ever want to just get and organize your subscriptions even, or actually make nice little bundles, nice little channels that will help you to keep up with and watch channels with videos that you want to do, get in and get using it. That's what I suggest. And look out for more updates hopefully this week. Certainly by this time next week I'm hoping to announce that it will be out of beta. Earthquakes. We had a big earthquake. That was a magnitude 6.0. It was another one of the Chiba slip earthquakes. So basically it's kind of complicated around Tokyo and Chiba. It's like Tokyo sitting on a little triangle where there's basically a plate that comes up to Chiba and Tokyo, and there's one that comes down, and then Chiba and Tokyo are sitting on a little sort of plate which kind of balances on top of both of them. Obviously after the big Tohoku quake at the top of this picture, way up here, that put a lot of pressure further down the fault line down here, which didn't move as much, and so now there have been a whole lot of little quakes down here. The fear, of course, is that it's waiting to trigger another big slip, like what happened further up during the Great East Japan earthquake. But what's happened over the last few months is there's been an identifiable, consistent move of a number of earthquakes, just of pressure being, I'm not actually sure if it's being added to or released. It works basically, you know, the whole mechanism of earthquakes around Japan is it works like a ratchet, basically, where the sinking plate drags more land down with it, and every 100 years or so, boom, it pops back up and causes a mega quake. There's been a lot of movement, and this is part of that ongoing mega movement that's been happening in the last couple of months. But this was the biggest one. It was a Shindogo minus over here in northern Chiba by the coast. No significant tsunamis from it. But Go minus is enough to cause minor damage. It's a little bit weaker, I think, than the Osaka quake that happened the other week. In Tokyo, it was a significant shake. It wasn't a 4. A 4 isn't properly scary, but it was a solid 3. I mean, it was a 3 where I am, but it was enough to make me go and open the door to avoid it getting jammed or anything like that. So, yeah, you know, we are continuing to have quakes, and it seems ironic because while this is happening in Tokyo, this is happening everywhere else in Japan. Tokyo seems to have escaped most of the rain, you know, that's particularly dominated Kyushu and western Japan, and indeed the rest of it's curled around to Hokkaido, and they're getting heavy rain as well. There are at this point over 75 people dead and 50 missing at the moment, mostly from landslides. You know, people getting trapped in towns that are basically like this, inundated. They can't drive, they can't get out of their houses. Helicopter rescues, just, you know, across a huge, something like, I heard a number today of 4.7 million people have need to be evacuated. More than the population of New Zealand. I mean, I don't know how you do that or where you put those people, but this is all from what was a typhoon number 7, but it turned into a tropical depression that moved up the country. And it just moved up very, very slowly, and it dumped a lot of rain, like 45 centimeters in a day. On Hiroshima yesterday, and happening every day for like 6 or 7 or 8 days. So really, really unprecedented sort of rains. And while this was happening and we were enjoying sunny weather in Tokyo, we got an earthquake. But this is Japan, I suppose. Yeah, obviously a very, very tough time at the moment, and the loss of life has been really significant. Yeah, so, you know, obviously if you're particularly in Okayama or Shikoku or Hiroshima or parts of Kyushu, you know, be really, really careful. Some people have seen the safety alerts on Facebook. You know, and it's a good reminder, if you live in Japan in particular, but certainly if you live anywhere, you should always have a good amount of buffered stock of, you know, preservable foods, you know, not just canned food or whatever. You can have just bottled water, stuff like that, but keep a good buffer, because you never know when you're going to have a quake. And, you know, you're going to have trouble getting, you know, food and so on. Light Japan, did he do a vid on the floods in Kyushu? I should have a look at that. I haven't seen that video, but there we go. More information on that quake the other day. I mean, it was a big quake, and it was felt over a long area. Mint Crunky. So this is every year. This comes out. It's only available for a couple of months. Usually during summer, you get the sour drinks, which there haven't been so many of this year. I'd really like the Mexican lime Tropicana to please come out again. But you do get Mint Crunky. It's become an annual regular there from, what is the company? I think it's Lotte that makes this. Might be someone else. But in any case, it's the Choco Mint ice cream. And it's, well, I suppose in a global sense, it's not particularly special. But the Crunky, the little crunchy bits in the chocolate are very, very nice. And yes, generally international expat Twitter goes mad for these things, as do I. And I had my first one of these today, actually, for the season, and it was still delicious. So yes, Mint Cranky is back, and I suppose that's not really much consolation for the people who've suffered from flooding and earthquakes, but it's something. I mean, it's better than nothing. What can I say? I would like to draw attention to Radri. Radri has been doing a series of live streams lately. He actually did a show with the Andy was it 2 nights ago that I watched, and it was actually quite good. I mean, Radri's got a funny way about him that I think makes him, it's always easier to feel comfortable when the person you're talking to is obviously much more awkward than you are, and I think that's why everybody is able to speak very well when they talk to Radri. And yeah, actually, I really enjoyed listening to the Andy-san talk to him. And the next show, which I believe is this coming Friday, Tokyo Kuni, Radri got Tokyo Kuni to agree to a live show. So, you know, the man, the legend, he's been more active on Facebook lately. He's been back in America for a while. He still really is like I mean, it's always a bit of a thing as to, is it Roger Swan, was it Give Me a Break Man, or was it Tokyo Kuni? The thing about Tokyo Kuni as opposed to Give Me a Break Man, I think was around longer than Tokyo Kuni, but one, they're very, very different styles of bloggers, and Victor wasn't really very Japan specific, whereas Tokyo Kuni was of course always very Japan specific. So in that sense, you could say that Tokyo Kuni, he arranged the original YouTube Hanami, for example. So, you know, in many ways, he's a real, true founding father of the international Japan vlogging community, and he is coming back, or at least he's going to be on Radri's show, so it's going to be one to look out for. And I very much enjoyed this one, so yeah. By the way, remember, if you have a comment for me, remember to @mark me, and it will come up bright orange, and then I can see it and I can answer questions and so on. You can do that. If you are studying Japanese, don't forget tofugu.com. I think is one of the best sites around that's possible for that. I'm speaking of, oh, that's right, my poo hat, actually, it was, all the bits started falling off it, which I suppose happens to the poos eventually. So yeah, that's why it's not behind me anymore. Anyway, if you are studying Japanese, I continue to recommend Koichiben, another original YouTuber actually, who made an awesome Japanese learning site. And yes, they monthly recommend great learning resources online, not just the resources that they prepare themselves, and they prepare awesome resources, but they also recommend great tools that are available on the internet. And they are recommending this month, I don't know these sites at all, but I know that they're good, reliable recommendations if they're coming from tofugu.com. The recommendations are HG Podcast, Japanese Quest, Stardew Valley, Jisho Mono Oboe, and Terrace House, Season 2. Terrace House, I know that's a reality show on, and actually I can see that, because it's a reality show, it's kind of boring, but again, it's everyday situation, so I think that's pretty good. But I think they do, Tofugu really, they look at this really seriously. So if you are studying Japanese, especially on your own, or if you're studying Japanese at university and you're looking for extra resources to be able to come out and do that more, then I think this is a great, Tofugu is just an awesome resource. Anyway, you should just follow it anyway. He's a really good guy. The Sergeant Buko, this is just a test, nothing to be alarmed, but back to business. Yes, indeed. And down the bottom, Andrew Moboy, you had many YouTubers upload vlogs about VidCon in LA. Okay, yeah, well, I guess if you're in LA, that kind of makes sense. That was interesting. I didn't really follow it too closely. Of course, a bit of controversy with VidCon, that it's been taken over by, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was taken over by, was it Disney or one of the big studios? And some people feeling, and then there was like that rival VidCon across the road that was a total disaster because they didn't have any organization. I mean, it does sound like a real typical YouTuber type of thing, that too many people came in, it got shut down by the fire marshal, and people paid for it and they had to give the money back. But it sounds, by all accounts, like VidCon continues to get stronger and stronger. Tim the Asian Ink, I actually did a big intro. You're one of my, Tim the Asian Ink is one of my MyChan TV super users. I will repeat, MyChan TV is going to come out of beta, at least as a free site this week. We've made some major overhauls to the site. Actually, if you go have a look at it right now, you will find that we now have, for example, the ability to identify when channels were last refreshed, to sort your channel list by when channels were last updated, so you can get rid of, you can basically unsubscribe by clicking to unsubscribe to all of the dead channels or the channels that are not active, which is huge, I think. A lot of really cool updates to the site, and it's pretty stable. So there's two more things that we're updating, which is improving the speed of uploads of new bundle creations, and we're going to improve the mobile site, and then we're going to call it out of beta for the free site anyway. And probably the next step is going to be a Kickstarter. So yes, that's just for you, Tim the Asian Ink, but I wanted to let you know that. Yeah, you invited too many people, way too many people, Mr. Korichep. Like one of those old Facebook parties, I guess. What else we got here? So this is another one this week. So Shoko Asahara, otherwise his proper name is Matsumoto. Was it it's a real weird name as well. Is it Chizuko Matsumoto or Chizuo or something like that? What was his real name? I forget that now. But him and 7 other guys, Chizuo Matsumoto, who carried out the 1995 nerve gassing of, I believe it was the Hibiya line, the Marunouchi line, and the Chiyoda line, at the same time as the trains came into Kasumi Oseki Station. They put nerve gas, sarin gas onto 3 subways at the same time. They affected, basically, they nerve gassed. They poisoned over 25,000 people. A number of people died. A very large number of people have suffered permanent nerve damage and permanent disability from a horrific attack. And not just this attack, these people are kidnapped, tortured, murdered. A lawyer and his family that were investigating the cult on behalf of victims who had escaped the cult. They actually ran the nerve gas. They actually used a fan and drove through a town in in Yamanashi, and made a whole bunch of people sick. They didn't kill anyone in that town, but it was a test run to see if they could disperse it by driving through a town. And they were planning to release bubonic plague, botulism, I think, in Tokyo. So this was a seriously just messed up, and they were doing this because they wanted to claim it was being done by America and trigger a new world war between Japan and America by themselves launching the attacks on Tokyo. Crazy stuff. They killed a lot of people. Internally, they killed a lot of people. They killed their own members. They kidnapped people. They did horrible things. The leaders of the cult were rounded up. They've been in jail since 1995. After nearly 25 years now being in jail, and every day being taken to the execution chamber after they were all given confirmed death sentences. Today, or this week, they had the actual day where they actually did that. I'm not actually sure the method that they use in Japan, whether it's hanging or another method. Yes, they were executed. 7 people were executed at the same time. And there are still 6 more Aum Shinrikyo members from the same cult awaiting the death penalty in Japan. Nobody feels sorry, and I certainly don't feel any sympathy at all for, this guy did about as bad a thing as you can do. And, given that there are people inside the cult who have confirmed, all of this is true, I'm pretty comfortable feeling like this is a 100%, or as close to 100% as you can really get, short of actually videotaping, the whole thing actually happening, that these guys are guilty, including the leader, of course. However, it does raise a problem that I did bring up on Facebook today, which is not that I have any sympathy at all for the people. I think whatever the heaviest penalty you can give, these people obviously did everything to deserve it and to earn it. However, as the EU pointed out, and I've seen a few interesting reactions to this, let's be clear, the death penalty is super popular in Japan. It doesn't look like it's going to be overturned very soon, as in America as well. People generally support it. They like the idea that if somebody has done this terrible thing, they've forfeited all of their rights, including their right to live, and why should taxpayers fund having to feed and look after these people in some cushy prison? Just execute them. And I realize that this is the way it's been done through all of human history. In fact, typically the penalty for murder was themselves being executed. That's how humanity's gone for a very, very long time. But there again, most of the OECD countries, except for Japan and the United States, all the other developed countries that are basically listed as fully developed countries that report statistics on being developed, don't do this, and they don't do this for all sorts of reasons. Of course, there's always the chance you could execute an innocent person, and that's often been the trigger to get rid of the death penalty where it's been overturned. But once it's gone, I think you sort of realize, in the end of the day, what this requires is the Minister of Justice has to sign a murder order to the ministry, to the correction system, and then somebody who isn't a murderer is forced to murder someone, basically, as a punishment. So the punishment for murder is being murdered, and while that kind of intuitively makes sense, I couldn't do that, and I'm not sure it's ethical or that I would. And I work in the justice system for my job, so maybe this makes me more aware of this. It's a penalty which requires, and for context, maybe we're all desensitized. Maybe we watch too many action movies that we're used to seeing bad guys get killed, right? Or we're used to seeing more movies where the enemy gets killed, and maybe it's true that we're desensitized to it. But, there are parts of the world, of course, where there are a spectrum. We are horrified at how in some countries they dismember people, they torture people, they mutilate people. There are parts of the world where there are tribal councils that offer judicial sentences of gang rape, for example, as a punishment for someone, for example, for marrying out of wedlock, or marrying out of wedlock for basically not showing up to a organized wedding or something like that. They can be gang raped. And these things seem horrific, and we condemn them, but they're objectively still they're criminal acts. They're acts which ordinary people should never do as part of a judicial punishment, but they're objectively, all of them, in the end of the day, you survive, walk away, and can recover from or survive. And murder you can't, but yet we think murder is okay. I personally have a problem with the idea of any justice system that thinks that, that forces normal, ordinary, non-murderers to murder people in order to carry out the justice system, itself. Most people get pulled up in the abstract. Well, that person shouldn't be alive. That person should be killed, or whatever. That person deserves to die. I don't feel any sympathy for that person. Is the way that we intuitively react. But in the end of the day, the carrying out of the sentence requires a whole bunch of people to consciously execute a prisoner. I have a problem with that. You're not allowed to execute prisoners of war. They kill people. I personally have ethical problems with this, and I share the view of the EU, and I applaud the EU for. And the point is that you don't pull this out when you have a borderline case of someone who might be innocent, or someone who's sympathetic, or someone who, you pull it out in exactly this case. This is the perfect case, the least sympathetic case that I can think of. The principle doesn't change. It's like, why do you have to make murders murders? Why do you have to murder murderers, to me? And although I've heard some people comment back that, for example, the idea that that this is Western imperialism, that this is cultural imperialism, let Asians decide what's right for Asians, and of course Japanese decide for themselves. At the same time, I credit to the EU. There are not many countries left in this world that speak up for human rights anymore. It used to really be a thing, but now everyone's pretty much sold out. I mean, there are a bunch of very nasty dictatorships that are so powerful now and so wealthy now that people don't want to be out of step, criticizing them for, violating human rights. And credit to EU here. It's not trying to westernize Japan at all. I mean, America does it too. But they're right to say what's wrong is wrong. So anyway, for me, as much as the crimes were terrible, the punishments, the heaviest punishments available are deserved, I'm personally against that, And it's interesting, most people sort of agreed. There were some people who told me that they disagreed, and people are entitled to disagree. It's the majority view in Japan. I'm in the minority, but I think it's always good to debate these things, and it's good to keep a perspective on it. Some more there. Oh, by the way, just as interesting, it's a tricky. This is a tricky rabbit hole. But Steve from Berkeley says on the bottom. Now, I do agree, innocent people are executed, and it is unacceptable, and I think a valid argument against capital punishment. I used to be very much on that vein, that they'll never have a 100% system, and you could. But here's the thing for me. I've thought about it. My view on this has changed. I think even in the theoretical case that we know it doesn't exist, that you can have a 100% system, that you can have a system that's 100%, oh, that person is guilty. I still don't think you should have the death penalty even then, because again, to me, it's not whether or not they are deserving of the maximum criminal penalty. That's fine. It's the whole thing about the penalty and the nature of the penalty and whether the penalty should be available or not. To me, it's not based on the guilt or the sympathetic or the risk associated with the conviction. It's based on whether, again, you can't order mutilation or rape or, any of the in-between things. Confinement itself is, by the way, a crime, and we do recognize that. But the idea that you can actually... if I were a prison guard and I was told the Minister of Justice has said that person in that cell is a very, very bad person, and you are authorized by the state to go and execute that person should no longer live. It's 100%, don't worry about it, please go kill him. Could I kill him? Well, I'd like to think that I couldn't. I mean, again, the Berkeley, I believe it was the Berkeley prison experiment, coincidence, proved that ordinary people, when they're given power over other people, can do horrible things to other people. Apparently it's part of the human psyche that we can do it. But I would like to think that we don't rely on those instincts of allowing prison guards and prison staff to murder prisoners as part of our justice system. I think that should be out, whether they're 100% guilty or not. Personally, anyway, it's a never-ending debate. That's my personal view. I'm expressing it, of course. The majority disagree, and they're allowed to disagree. That's the status quo in Japan. But, that's Stanford, not Berkeley. It was Stanford. Thank you. Steve from Berkeley, thank you for... Has it been largely debunked? Has it? Well, in that case, well, that's the thing. I'd like to think I'm not one of those Stanford prison guards, and I wouldn't go and just randomly abuse or murder people under my watch as a guard, right? But that's what our justice system relies on, at least in countries that have the death penalty like Japan does. Anyway, YouTube has been mass deleting hate speech channels, which have been largely basically right-wing channels. Some of them have disputed whether they are in fact hate speech. But certainly YouTube has been more proactive about this lately. It's triggered a bit of a backlash, but there's been a kind of a mass deletion there. And of course, anyone who looks at Japanese YouTube knows that there are a lot of extreme right-wing and a lot of very anti-Korean, specifically, and anti-immigration right-wing channels that I think do cross the line sometimes and use what clearly meets the definition of hate speech. Whether all of the channels being deleted meet that or not, I don't know. But certainly YouTube has been doing a purge of such content, and although some of them are fighting and arguing back, I'd say it's good to see that YouTube is drawing a line on unacceptable content, precisely for all the reasons. I mean, these are people who, however correct that they think they are, they're basically advocating for harm towards categories and classes of people. And the same, geez, we just talked about that. That's how that stuff starts. So, I'm glad that they've done that. Mitsubishi Jidosha, Mitsubishi Motors, they, after all the scandals that they've been through, it seems like they can't stop. Apparently they've just, they've had 24 of these foreign apprentices being sent back to their home countries after it found that they were being used for tasks outside of the scope of their apprenticeships. Again, the whole thing we've talked about before, it's basically being used as a workaround for the minimum wage in Japan. It's being used largely to abuse these foreign workers. And the irony is that the horrible thing is that when the employers are caught doing this, it seems that it's the apprentices that get punished, more than the employers. They're the ones who actually lose their jobs and get sent home. So anyway, by the Sergeant Bilko. Are you going? Are you? Okay. Well, have a good one if you are going. Boom. What else have we got here? Japan is starting to admit, I mean, again, not always under the best circumstances, but they are definitely rapidly expanding the categories of jobs that they will recognize for foreign work visas, and they're making it easier all the time to come to Japan. So, again, the employment crisis in Japan is getting progressively worse. So, it's a necessary measure. But certainly, if you're interested in Japan and you'd like to come here, it's still a great place to live, a great place to work, and it's getting easier and more open all the time to it. So that's a good thing. The Thai cave rescue. I only talk about Japan stuff no matter how interesting the global stories are, but this, I mean, I have to. I'm going to Thailand in a few weeks. Maybe that's my excuse, but it's. I don't know why Scott Pruitt is there as as a tag. Isn't that the EPA guy? Well, in any case, look, these fantastic that they found that whole soccer team of kids in the coach safe. Movie material that they have to get these kids out before the caves get flooded again. It is currently rainy season in Thailand, and I really, really obviously hope that they will be successful at that. Epic, just how they were found, how they are, the fact that they've been able to get air and phone lines and food and everything in, but again, the challenge of getting them out, the kids can't swim. Let alone be able to dive. I've done caving before. If you ever go to New Zealand, I think there's parts of Japan that you can do this as well. There's the Waitomo caves, which have glowworm caves, and you can go to a caving thing, you get into a wetsuit, the water's freezing cold, you go through these dark caves, you actually go through some very narrow parts, and it is freaky. I'm not claustrophobic generally, but I mean, when you are going through crevasses, which are both your chest and your back are pressing, and you are aware that you've got hundreds of meters of rock and soil above you and below you, and you're going through, I mean, that's pretty claustrophobic, that's pretty freaky, that somehow you are in a crevasse that's got like millions of tons of stuff above and below. And there are spots here that, for example, the divers can't wear their scuba equipment, their diving packs, their their air tanks. They can't wear them. They have to remove them to go through some of the narrow parts. They have to climb, like mountain climb parts of it, all in the dark underground. But it sounds like there is significant rain coming in 4 days. The Thai Navy SEALs have decided that they are going to do an extraction, and they're doing it right now. And I really hope everyone gets out. Of course, one of the rescuers did die the other day. So it's still, very, very dangerous and so on. Caving in a safe and controlled environment, I recommend it. It's fun, and it's actually good to get a very small appreciation of what these kids are doing. That they survived for so long was amazing, and I really hope that they all get out. I mean, it's just an amazing story. Yeah, what else have we got? This is kind of interesting. There's been a big kind of debate going on lately about the idea of the use of biometrics by government, like camera, facial recognition, all that sort of stuff. I mean, this technology is now rolling out. There have already been cameras everywhere, and they're just basically making the cameras smarter and making it easier to pick people out. And I think we're heading towards a Minority Report world where, and people are asking now, do we want governments to have this sort of, ability to track us and to identify us? And it's something we have to think about. For me, I got another reminder. Every time I go through airports, I do get a reminder of this. On the one hand, we don't want to necessarily be tracked, all the time by government. I don't think that this technology should be used for that, and I think that there should be laws to prevent it being used for that. But that said, the technology has a place, and I can think when you go through an airport, essentially what they're doing is they fingerprint you, they photograph you, they look at you, they look at your passport, they identify who you are and why you're there. I mean, they are tracking you. That is the whole purpose, is to record your entry, that you are who you say you are and that you're coming through. Biometrics are a great way not only to prevent fraud, for example, fake passports and so on, but they're also a great way just to avoid the need to go through a human every time you go through customs. This allows me to walk straight from the airplane to the taxi, like I was in a domestic terminal, by having cameras and everything just recognize me. I would be all for that. And they're doing this en masse in Australia, and they're talking about it elsewhere, and it's something actually from a travel perspective. I know that people make a big deal about, take your shoes off and everything, like you have to do when you're in America and so on, and we all know why they do that. But in the end of the day, there have been security violations even with everyone taking their shoes off. And the queues that I had to put up with, going through Seattle and stuff like that, I mean, again, it's all, why should it be different? Why should traveling be a different experience, if you ask me, to going through a domestic airport? And if this makes it more like that, I'm actually very happy about it. But there you go. So Sydney's going to do that, and I know that they're looking at doing the same thing in Japan, and for me, I'm in favor of that. Petapixel, this is a great blog on photography and cameras and so on. If you're into it, this is like the best one. I think I do subscribe to it on RSS, and I saw this the other day. It's aimed at photographers, but 10 tips for taking your vlogging to the next level, and it's an interesting, worth reading anyway. Look it up, Petapixel, vlogging tips. First one of these I've seen for a while. But some things to bear in mind. First of all, the classic narrative structure. I guess if you tell a story, it's generally like this. I don't know how you do the general dramatic story structure per se, but certainly if you are doing videos and posting videos, it's good to know. Give yourself a quest or whatever, a target. Create lots of content. Well, I guess this makes sense if it's Petapixel. Have a B-roll or whatever. Time lapses make good B-roll, and this is also true. Find fun ways to tell your stories. Why not? Good stories are good, although there again doesn't always necessarily work. Equipment, this is interesting. They recommend the Sony RX100V, which is a great compact little camera, and it's pretty much good enough. I don't know why they have ads like that there. Tripod, that's right. Holding it has its place, but it's generally shaky camera, and tripods are good for that, and it looks much, much better. Forget perfection, that's right. Just get it out there and find your thing, personality and energy. And there's that weird ad again. I swear I don't click on those things. How did this come up in Petapixel? Seriously, I have no idea. Well, anyway, moving right along. Speaking of cameras, they are installing cameras on the Yamanote line. Again, I think it's a good thing. They've been, partly from the groping that's been going on there for years and years, but also after the recent murder incident on the bullet train, when they installed cameras on the bullet trains. It makes sense. I mean, again, when you think about the gas attacks on the subway lines, and by the way, the subway lines are not included in this, but when you think about that, that was what prompted the installation of cameras in the train stations, because all of the perpetrators rode the trains. They dropped the siren on the trains. They all got off at a station before Kasumiyoseki, and they ran out. So they put the cameras in to try to capture and identify people on the platforms. But I mean, again, I think it's one, it's inevitable, and two, it's probably a good idea again for catching people doing what they shouldn't do. Baidu, the Chinese company, is developing self-driving buses to deploy in Japan. Already how I can't wait for self-driving cars and self-driving buses. You think about how many bus accidents we've had in the last few years in Japan because there is a shortage of bus drivers. a lot of parts of Japan that don't have train access that require buses, or people who just can't afford bullet trains, so they use overnight bus trips to get around Japan, and they have crashes because the drivers can't stay awake, and those buses are not driven safely. I think, again, safe, steady driverless buses means that you can have more of them. They can be working all around the clock. And it should improve convenience, cost, lower risk. I mean, there just aren't enough bus drivers. There are not enough people in Japan to drive the buses that are needed. So this is good. Obviously, first generation technology, and it is life critical. So I sure hope they've got their technology right. I'm guessing it will start out on a small scale rather than being like overnight from Tokyo to Osaka or something like that. But that's where it needs to go. And super interesting that Baidu, the Chinese search engine, is the company providing these buses, not car companies. So yeah, very, very interesting. And I think SoftBank is working with them, right? But it's also signaling what's happening in the US as well, which is a shift of technology companies getting into the car industry. If you get the chance, now you need to go to Odaiba and check out the TIME Lab Borderless, the fixed Mori-built exhibition center of TIME Lab. TIME Lab does really, really awesome, innovative, basically art, but also interactive digital technology-based sort of projects and demonstrations. But their art demonstrations are amazing, and now they've got a dedicated gallery for it. It's already considered one of the most Instagrammable places you can go in Tokyo. Most of the exhibits there are interactive, and they are awesome. So check this out if you are in Japan. And indeed, there it is, the TIME Lab Borderless exhibition thing. As the typhoon that caused all that rain there, that became a tropical depression, passed over Tokyo. It didn't really rain very much. It rained a bit. Great sunset there, actually, just a moment to pop through all the really dark clouds. So I captured that on my way home the other day. That was really, really cool. My Kenko Shindan this week. Every week you have to do a mandatory corporate, every year you have to do a mandatory corporate health checkup in Japan. And once you're over 35, they make you basically do the old stomach test, and you get a choice. And it's pretty much like being asked, do you want to be punched in the head or the gut? They ask, do you want the stomach camera or do you want the barium? I tried the stomach camera. It's where they put a tube down your throat into your stomach, and I didn't enjoy that. Some people are okay with it. They can relax. I couldn't really relax, and if you can't relax, it's extremely unpleasant. I did that, and I said, I'm never doing that again. So the next time I took the barium. The barium is basically radioactive plaster of Paris that you have to drink. But it's not just that. What you do is, before you drink it, they give you a little cup of powder, and you put that in your mouth, and it basically is designed to generate as much gas as possible. So you wash it down with water, it mixes with the water, and it creates all this gas, which basically inflates your stomach like a basketball. And you are told that you are not allowed to burp because they use it for the imaging. So you're in this very uncomfortable position with an overly inflated stomach, all this gas rapidly inflating. And then they ask you to drink basically a couple of, a huge amount of this sort of plaster of Paris, and it's literally plaster of Paris that you drink, and that's got a radioactive substance in it, which shows up really well on the MRI or the X-ray machine that they use. So it's like those little videos. They can actually see it going through your stomach, and it lights up your stomach as it goes through, and it allows them to see if you have ulcers or any sort of problems like that. But in order to get a proper view, they actually have to rotate you all around, and they also need to coat your stomach with the plaster of Paris. So you have to stand on this machine that basically holds you upside down. You have to hold on to these rails really, really hard and not move and not burp while it shakes you to try to get this stuff, and roll around yourself on the table to get your whole stomach coated, which is inflated like a basketball, and you're not allowed to burp. And then after that, you're allowed to burp, but again, it's hard to come up because your stomach's like coated in this plaster of Paris. Also, what follows for the next couple of days is also not very pleasant, I can tell you. The result of that, they said, is nothing unusual. So good news, but it's quite a lot to go through. I mean, it's great on the one hand that you can capture problems early. It's also great that you get all this other fantastic health data, which I now have going back more than 20, not more than 20 years, but 20 years. My 20 years in Japan, I have fantastic health data. But man, the barium is harsh, and I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to the stomach camera at some point, but I don't really like either of them anyway. But still, yes, a lot of people choose the stomach camera because they find the barium so unpleasant. But for me, the stomach camera felt like violence. I mean, that's what it felt like. The barium was unpleasant, but there we go. A late boom indeed, Jody Jr. Good to have you with us. So that's what I did this week, and that's why I put that there. Colas, the awesome font site, has a latest update of awesome Japanese free fonts. If you ever want free Japanese fonts, go to colas.com. They do an annual huge, like hundreds of Japanese fonts. This is the second half of 2018. Awesome fonts in Japanese, some that work with kanji, some that don't. But they are awesome, they look cool, and you can download them for free and use them on your computer, and fonts are awesome even now. They're as awesome now as they were back in the 90s before the internet, when fonts were still awesome back then too. So, I mean, check it out, you know. And Japanese is kind of cool, and you get all these kind of, you know, handwritten type things, so you'd like that. And you did very, very well lasting this long. Have a good night there. Oh, by the way, the J-Vlog, Kyushu just got hit hard, and so did Hiroshima. Indeed it did, with the floods. Have a good night, Andrea Moboya. I'll be around a little bit longer. Go check out colas.com. That is awesome. They have like the best fonts. What else have we got here? Asian cities up the ranks as the most expensive for expats. Tokyo is back up to number 2, unfortunately. In fact, I could log into that, but how could I do that without showing my password? I don't want to do that. So I think Hong Kong is back up to number 1 and Tokyo is number 2. Is what it is. It can be expensive. Zozo Town, the Japanese site, they actually use a New Zealand company that developed a suit that you can actually put on that will measure your entire body, and it allows these Japanese and Chinese clothing makers to make completely custom tailored clothes for you. Which I must admit, I haven't tried it, but I'm kind of intrigued. I think it's wonderful that you can actually do this. And the idea, this is the thing, whenever you go to buy clothes online, your biggest fear is that the clothes are not going to fit properly. So they're designed that they're an online clothes retailer. They're already, I think, the biggest online clothing retailer in Japan. They're a Japanese company. And they have this great technology to actually allow you to have custom fitted suits made from wearing this very goofy looking suit that they can mail to you and you can try on, and they can collect the data for you. They're releasing in 72 countries. This is the sort of thing actually that Rakuten and Amazon and those guys I think should be doing as well. That's one approach to it anyway, by getting the right size sort of stuff. But they're an interesting company, and they're probably going to become available. The number 1 online clothing shop in Japan is probably going to become available where you are very soon, given that they've just gone global, which is interesting. More foreign workers. In fact, what's that graph look like now? The number of foreign workers in Japan has gone from less than 500,000 out of probably 3 million residents, but so I don't know how that quite works. Maybe these are people on working visas. Has now gone to 1.28 million, so it's gone up quite a way, as you can see, and it's continuing to increase as it's needed, actually. And yes, still a large majority of them are, for example, the Brazilian and Peruvian with Japanese ancestry visas. There are students and there are technical interns, 20%, which is a lot, which is disturbing. But yeah, lots more foreigners coming. Space tourism. I mentioned before how it was always my thing as a kid that I wanted to be an astronaut. I didn't become an astronaut, but it soon looks like there's going to be multiple companies offering space tourism, like within 1 to 2 or 3 years. Virgin Galactic, they've just opened a spaceport in Italy. They're getting ready, although, you know, they had one of their things blow up. You've also got Blue Origin, and I think SpaceX is also planning to do space tourism as well, and they're all planning to offer paid, I think suborbital anyway, and probably soon after that orbital flights within the next 2 years. And, you know, Blue Origin are actually planning by 2023 to actually have facilities on the moon, which they have the New Glenn rocket, which should be able to service those facilities. And SpaceX, I believe, is already aiming for Mars. So it's awesome, and I love the fact that people can pay for these things, and it's actually attainable. That, you know, I'm hoping that it'll come down into a realm. Sergeant Bucco waits until they'll offer return tickets. Hell, I'm not going to wait. It'll make a fantastic final vlog. But yeah, I don't know. This is something that if this becomes like feasible before I'm like 50. 8 years, I think that's a pretty reasonable time for this to become economic and for me to try to save money. Damn, I want to do this. I really want to do this. You know, it's a bit, I guess it's a bit like flying, like being on an international flight in the 1920s or something like that, when it still is a bit exclusive. But let's pay Faker to go to Mars. Yes, please do that. I'll do a Kickstarter. And I know why you're saying that, and I don't care. I want to go, so I'm going to take it anyway, Mr. Cordychep. Be nice. A possible destination, or probably not, but super interesting. The first time I've ever captured a planet being formed. I mean, a really, really big planet, by the way. but we've actually been able to photograph a planet being formed in a planetary protodisk around a star. That was super awesome. That was this week. Lightro put out this kind of compact camera, which rather than have like a big DSLR lens, they realized that you could construct a virtual big lens on a very thin device by having multiple small lenses and basically using an algorithm to unify the images from all of those. And essentially this is the thing, when you talk about cameras or telescopes, I used to make telescopes as a kid. They're light buckets. The idea is that you're trying to capture as much photons as possible, and the bigger the collection space, the bigger the lens, the brighter the image will be. They've just realized that for all the limitations you have with that little pinpoint camera that you have on the iPhone, which they've done amazing things with, you can easily create a virtual bigger lens, the same way that you have these huge radio telescope farms now that they can create a single large virtual lens, and they've done this. They're apparently preparing to release a smartphone with 9 lenses. Seems like overkill, but remember, this is all going to be merged into one photo. I think it's super cool, the idea, if they can get the technology right, and I'm very excited about it, and I'm curious to see when this comes out. Plus, of course, if this gets into regular smartphone technology. A new Japanese test looks like it's going to come out. It's going to be a test for Japanese proficiency for the purpose of working in Japan. For foreign workers, a number of companies are developing it. They already have the Japanese proficiency test, so I'm not sure exactly what they are looking for from this extra test, but it looks like there is going to be a new one coming out soon, so look out for that. It could be a new thing to study for. Airbnb, so apparently a little bit of an explanation about the new law on private lodgings, which is basically Airbnbs, and what they need to do. And these are regulations which just require that they have adequate fire exits, emergency goods and so on. A significant number of foreign tourists use them, so they set standards basically that you need to do, including the very biggest blocker, which is that you have to be allowed to offer B&B in the building that you're in. Even in the West, there are often express restrictions on sublets in leases, and in Japan, you've got very conservative landlords to begin with, and they might not be happy with the idea of you letting out a room, to sublet a room to a lodger. And again, when it's all informal, perhaps you can get away with it, but under the new law, if you want to offer this as a business, you actually have to make sure that you have the permission of the landlord, and I'm pretty sure that's the biggest blocker. But in addition to that, you've got to have things like disabled access. You don't want to be a disabled person, use Airbnb and find out that the building has no disabled access. Fire, again, safety equipment, all the sort of stuff that are required of hotels and other sort of lodging businesses are now required here, and it's a pain, it's a burden for the people who run it. But in the end of the day, it's to ensure that people, when they are customers, that they don't get burned to death, or that they can actually access the facilities and so on. So it's got, although it's had a burning effect, that it's caused a lot of Airbnbs to become ineligible, which has then led to people basically apparently working ways around the roadblocks. Apparently what was happening was a lot of the banned Airbnb people, the people who had their reservations cancelled, would figure out how to contact the banned Airbnb owner and do it anyway. It's good as a temporary workaround, but you don't want to go there if you can avoid it, and certainly they're going to get in trouble for it, so it's probably just a temporary thing. But the hope is that what we'll have going forward is a proper model for people who really want to do Airbnb seriously. It looks like it's a good business. So I think we will see it grow, but obviously it's gone through a huge expansion, and now it's going to contract because of regulation, and then hopefully it will grow again. It was very badly mishandled, both by Airbnb, that knew it was coming and kept collecting money and allowed a disaster to happen, and the Ministry of Tourism, that really could have done a lot more to work with Airbnb, because they've really upset a lot of tourists, in the end of the day. But yes, it's been very, very poorly handled, but now it's there, it's a reality, and hopefully things will go forward from now on a better footing. When I went to Seattle recently, I tried coffee in a number of places. I had a couple of good coffees, but generally, I found the Starbucks coffee, much to my surprise. Although Seattle is the home of Starbucks, the Starbucks here was objectively clearly worse than the Starbucks I have in Japan, and I think this comes down to Japanese are actually pretty picky about their coffee. And the baristas here are pretty good quality. They make good coffees generally. At least in Tokyo, if you go to a proper coffee place, I don't know how it is in rural, small ramen places when they're offering a coffee. I'm not talking about that. But for proper coffees, people who care about their coffee, Japanese have a way of getting into the detail of subjects, in obsessive kind of ways, and they tend to do these things very well. And apparently, Japan's become very well known as a good third wave coffee destination, where there are particular coffee connoisseur sort of places which are very, very good to go to. There are a few around where I work. And I think we're actually kind of spoiled. So if you like coffee, Japan is another good reason to come to Japan. Another interesting thing this week, China put its Coast Guard under military command, and then it sailed a couple of ships into Japanese waters. So that really means that now they're using around the Diaoyu Islands, the Senkaku Islands, basically they are integrated as part of Japan's territory, and Japan exercises control over them. China says that they were given to Japan by accident. They're rightfully part of China, and they run Coast Guard boats around in the territorial waters regularly. Japan's been careful not to provoke China by developing the islands, and China's always been kind of careful not to provoke Japan by not, putting military forces around it. But now there's been this grey zone, which is kind of an escalation on the Chinese side, and it makes you wonder if those boats that were going around before are now military boats. What's to stop them using real military boats, and what happens if Japan responds by using real military boats? Is that an escalation? So again, it's kind of China being able to be a dictatorship and do everything very slowly over time. Continues to be a tricky situation, especially when you look at what's happened in the South China Sea, where they're just pretty much walked in, slowly taking over the show. And that they've got a similar plan for this, and hopefully it won't lead to a confrontation, because that would suck. That's all my topics. It's 11:28. It's also quite hot in here, by the way. It's currently 28.6 degrees. It is hot here at night. I just had the aircon on, which I turned off. Don't know if you can see that, 28.6. The aircon makes a bit of background noise, but you know what, I'm going to turn it on anyway, just because it is hot. If I had a few more minutes, I'd make a tune, but I think we're I think we're good. So yeah, I'm going to make this video private afterwards, because I'm going to edit out the that bit, I guess. But yes, I hope that you're all well, and have a good week, everybody. I'll be going to Phuket in a couple of weeks, but I'll be back here next week. Hopefully announcing that MyChan TV is out of beta, and planning the next big step, which I think will be a Kickstarter. Have a good week, everybody, and see you all very, very soon, and peace. Remember, follow on Facebook and Twitter, and like the video if you like the video. So please remember to like, and have a good one, and see you, Mogberry Pie, and everybody else. Boom. Peace.